Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulihil kareem. So we've discussed the basis of fa'il and fa'il. The only new thing we learned was what? Qad. Now this is something I want to discuss. It's called stative verbs. Okay. In Arabic there's no such thing as stative verb, but for English translation it's slightly different. So you need to be aware of this. So we can divide all verbs into two categories. Okay. What are these two categories? Dynamic or stative. It's complicated, but it's very simple. Dynamic is basically a normal verb. A verb in which someone is doing an action. Okay? Someone is doing what? An action. For example, eat, run. You're doing something. It's an action you're actively carrying out. So these are normal verbs. They're called dynamic verbs. You don't even know dynamic verb because that's normal verbs. All verbs are dynamic verbs, apart from stative verbs. And a stative verb. Stative. So what does it show? A state. It's not actually an action. Like for example, to become sick. And normally in translation, the to be verbs. When you've done sarf before, you have to be sick, to be happy, fariha, hazina, to be tall, to be big, kabura. So those kind of words which have to be in the translation, they show a state more than an action. So these are called what? What are these called? Stative verbs. So two types of verbs. Dynamic verbs. What do they show? Dynamic verbs? Normal verb that show an action taking place. And what's a stative verb? It shows a state. Okay? And how can you tell a stative verb? What does it have in the translation in English? To be. So you have dynamic verbs versus stative verb. Dynamic verbs show an action taking place. And stative verbs show a state, a condition. And they recognize because they have what in the translation? To be. To be sick. And they're called stative verbs. Marid al-rajul, the man. So you can't say he's sick, or he's sick and he's sicking, and you don't have these kind of translations. You have to translate it differently. That's why it's important to categorize this so you know how to translate this. You following me? So for example here, there's two ways you can translate it. One is you translate it as a jumla ismiya. For example, Marid al-rajul, obviously it's past tense, isn't it? Marid is past tense. The man was sick. Yafrahu Zaydun, Zayd is happy. You get, it's jumla ismiya translation, isn't it? In Arabic it's a fa'il, fa'il. But translation wise, what is it? Like a jumla ismiya, because it's a stative verb. It shows a state, and jumla ismiya shows a state. Zayd is standing, Zayd is a scholar, Zayd is a student, Zayd is a plumber, Zayd is a businessman, a merchant. These are all states. So a stative verb is like a jumla ismiya in translation. So when you translate, you don't say he is sicking or he is happying or whatever. What do you say? He is happy, he was happy. Or in some cases you can show, say become. Zayd becomes happy, Zayd becomes ill. When it's madhi, it's became. And when it's mudari, it will become. But again, the context will tell you, is it a current state, is it evolvement of a state? But just keep in mind, a stative verb that translates more like jumla ismiya or with become, as opposed to a normal verb. Okay? So for example, you say, for example, you have here, Hina marida. So how do you translate that? When he became sick or when he was ill. You following me? When he was sick. So it's a verb. So why is it was sick? Isn't that kana? That's like kana, isn't it? But because the stative verb, it has the same as jumla ismiya. That makes sense? Okay? Farihtu, I became happy. Or I was happy. Okay? So summarizing, you have what? You have the dynamic verbs that show normal action, and that's what we're doing all this time in level 1. That's normal translation. You don't even need to know the word dynamic. That's like normal verbs. But the one that's different is stative verbs. They show a state, so therefore they're translated like a what? Like what? To be, or like a normal jumla ismiya. So you have to be in the translation, and when you translate it, you translate it how? Using jumla ismiya translation, or you translate it using the word became. Are you guys following me? Yes? Yeah, they can't be transitive. To be verb can never be transitive. Because the state, they show a state, they never have a maf'ul bihi. Good. Any other questions? Subhanallah bihamdi subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.